So this time we are looking at the inverse trig functions. So that is different than the reciprocal trig functions. So the reciprocal ones were like cosecant, secant, cotangent. Inverse trig functions will, instead of it being the flip of a function, it's going to actually undo what was already done to something. All right, so it's inverse, like multiplication and division. All right, so this is called sine inverse of x, or you can call it arc sine. All right, or you could say inverse sine of x. All right, lots of different ways to say it there. But it's going to be helpful when you're solving for an angle. So, if you're doing, let's say you did tangent of 45. All right. So again, make sure you are in degree mode for this. So if you did tangent of 45, that's going to equal 1. All right, tangent of 45 equals 1. So if you were to ask the question the other way around, like if you were to ask tangent of what angle equals 1, so tangent of what angle equals 1, well, we know it's 45 because we just saw it. But if you didn't know it, that's where these inverse trig functions would come into play. All right, so if I press the inverse trig function right here, all right, so I got to do blue and that. Oh, sorry, there it is. So if I do the inverse tangent or the arc tangent of 1, it's going to give me my 45 degrees that I started with. So it tells us that 45 there. All right, so same type of question going on here. We've got sine of some angle equals 1/2. Now, if you saw the other video prior to this, then you've already know the answer to this. So they're searching for some degree measure so that the sine of that will equal 1/2. Well, the way that we're going to figure this out is we're going to take the arc sine or the inverse sine of 1/2. All right, so the kind of the way that you would work it out. So you would do the inverse sine of this side, all right, and you would do the inverse sine of this side. So I guess, let me write this over here, I guess. Oh, I can't erase it because this is not in pencil. So if I did the inverse sine over here, all right, with a little -1 there, well, this side is going to give me my answer. So inverse sine of 1/2 gives me 30 degrees. So this part just equals 30 degrees. And this side over here, well, when you combine, like I have it written over here, when you combine a function with its inverse, all right, some function's inverse with a function, that will always equal just whatever you had starting out. So in this case, it would just equal x. All right, so if we look back at the original equation, it was sine of what number will give you 1/2? Well, we just figured it out. It was 30. All right. So here we've got a tangent of something will give us 1.732. So we're going to do the inverse tangent or the arc tangent of both sides. This side over here is where you're going to get your answer. So you're doing the inverse tangent of 1.732. Over here you just get x. So inverse tangent 1.732. And that equals 60 degrees. All right, and just kind of round it here. It's because I rounded off the 1.732. All right, and then this time here, it's a cosine of what angle gives us √2 over 2. So I'm going to do the inverse cosine. Then for √2 over 2, √2 over 2 gives us 45 degrees. All right, so the x, whatever the number you were actually trying to figure out, the angle, is equal to 45 degrees. And I think that is all for this video. Let me check here. Might not be. Nope, it's not. Sorry. Just a hair more. I'm supposed to squeeze this into the video. All right, so there is some subtle notation that you need to know the difference between. All right, so this means f inverse of x. All right, so it's the inverse of f of x. But whenever you have the whole thing raised to a -1 power, that means the reciprocal of f of x, which would be 1 over f of x. So the inverse and the reciprocal are different things is what I'm trying to highlight here. But the notation is really similar. They both use a little -1 for it. All right, so here they're using the -1 as an exponent. And when you raise something to the negative power, it kind of flips it to the bottom and makes the power positive. So this is f of x to the first power. But when you just have, a -1 in there, like f, and then right next to it, I guess, -1, that means the inverse of it. All right, so it's real subtle, but you need to know the difference here. So this one, it does mean the inverse sine of x, or the arc sine. But this one over here, because they're taking the sine of x and they are applying a negative exponent to it, well, this would be 1 over sine of x, and 1 over sine, as we know, is equal to cosecant of x. All right, so they are different things.